What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest out brew the Magic World. As always, the deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I would love if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, check out all those links down in the description. I would really appreciate it. We're going to finish up our last video before we get into Bloomborough with a fan suggestion that just happened to come at the right time because Modern Horizons 3 had some great enchantment support. So I thought, why not run with the fan suggestion, take the Modern Horizons 3 enchantment support, and let's pull it together for Estrid the Masked, a 4-mana planeswalker that could be your commander. There aren't a ton of those, so that's important. 3 loyalty commander, +2 can untap each enchanted permanent you control, not each of them. -1 to make a white or enchantment token named Mask attached to another target permanent. The token has enchant permanent and totem armor. And the -7, put the top 7 cards from your library into your graveyard, return all non-aura enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then do the same for auras. Estrid is a really interesting card, in my opinion, for 3 reasons, and that's all 3 of its abilities. The first one untaps each enchanted permanent you control, which could be very important when you start enchanting lands with auras, or have creatures that tap for mana that are enchanted. You start to see some multiple times, using them per turn. The -1 makes a Mask Umbra Armor, right now. The card was, of course, printed before they recently changed from Totem to Umbra Armor, attached to any permanent, not just a creature. I think this is fairly important because as much as we want them probably attached to creatures to protect them, we could, use that to protect a key piece of our board state, a Hallowed Haunting, something like that, which is important. And then the -7, what's cool is you're bringing back all non-aura enchantments first, so that you potentially have creatures to attach those auras, right, that are coming back too. So, to me, there's a lot of value. You need 2 turns, right, to tick up Estrid to get to her -7, so we got plenty of time that we can work with there. We're going to talk about Enchantress. I mean, it's very hard to talk about an enchantment deck without talking about Enchantress draw, the way we're going to draw when we play things. We're about just ways we're going to print value. I mean, enchantment decks are so good at making value and getting not just card draw, but other things. We're going to talk about that. And we are kind of spinning this Estrid deck towards auras, since it's all about, untapping enchanted permanents we control. We're going to talk about just some auras that can not only fulfill that for us, but make us a threat with the bigger and bigger creatures get. So as far as the Enchantress type ability goes, we have things like Eidolon of Blossoms. Whenever it or another enchantment comes into our control, we draw a card. Of course, Spirit Dance, whenever we cast an aura, we can draw a card. We have the new Pearl Ear from Modern Horizons 3, which says whenever you cast an aura that targets a modified permanent you control, draw a card. So the thing that we already are targeting has to already have something on it or a counter on it to draw a card, but it's still helpful. The other nice thing about Pearl Ear is it says enchantment spells you cast have affinity for auras, so they can get even cheaper for the more auras we have. Satyr Enchanter just draws a card every time we cast an enchantment spell. Citizen Champion says whenever another enchantment comes in, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. And then Sithis, whenever we cast an enchantment, gain a life and draw a card. So you see a good mix of draw here, both on cast and on ETB. And then to round it out, we have Tuvasa, the secondary commander for Estrid's original deck, +1/+1 for each enchantment we control, and whenever we cast our first enchantment spell each turn, we draw a card. And then Enchantress's Presence, the name, of course, where Enchantress comes from. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. So there's a lot of ways that this works out, the Enchantress Presence and all the Enchantresses themselves, drawing cards that we're trying to put enough of these effects in play that when we're playing our auras and we're playing our enchantments, we're drawing cards, refilling our hand, and pushing us forward. But it's not just about that. This deck is full of a ton of value. I've always looked at this Bant strategy as trying to take what I took from Elevere, what I loved from that deck, and pushing it into Bant by adding a few more things. You have things like Calyx, which is great in his own right. Constellation, putting counters on creatures whenever it or another enchantment comes in. And then whenever it or an enchanted player deals combat damage to a player, you need to create a token copy that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment we control and do this only once each turn. This is going to get great, whether we're copying auras, whether we're copying enchantments we have on the battlefield. I mean, Calyx unchecked for a couple turns can just wreak havoc on our opponents. Elevere, out of that Wilds of Eldraine precon, whenever ETBs or attacks, you create a Virtuous Roll token, which kind of becomes a mini Ethereal Armor, all that glitter style effect, just +1/+1 for each enchantment we control on that creature. And then whenever an enchantment creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So We don't just want to soup up our creatures, we want to get in for damage rate, and we're going to get paid off for that. Ivy's are really fun. Whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy it, and the copy targets Ivy. This is great because if we're putting auras on other creatures, Ivy's going to get copies of them, and Ivy's going to become big as well. And that's really important as we kind of go wide and spread our values. Same thing with something like Light Paws. Whenever an aura ETB is under our control, if we cast it, we can search all the way for an aura with less mana value than it, or equal to it, in a different name for each other aura we control, and put it on Light Paws. So if we pay a 3 or 4 mana for an aura, we can go get a 1 or 2 or 3 mana aura, and put it attached with it. This is great because it can start picking the right things out of our deck and getting them onto the battlefield. And that can be copied with Calyx or some of these other abilities to keep spread around. Umbra Mystic's a great card for our deck. Auras attached to permanents you control have Totem Armor or Umbra Armor now. This is great because then everything's going to protect that creature with that Umbra Armor ability, meaning our creatures can hopefully stick around for longer. Yenna Redtooth Regent, for 2 mana, we can choose an enchantment we control that doesn't have the same name as another permanent we control. And as long as we can do that, we create a token that's a copy of it, except it's not legendary, and if the token's an aura, we untap Yenna and scry 2. This is a great ability because we can start creating copies of those auras. We can only do it once, right? It can't share the name as another permanent we control, but I don't think we mind that at all as we're copying the right things. We don't have to copy an aura. Now Yenna untaps if we do, but again, just like Calyx, I think if we can get the right copies of the right things at the right time, we're going to help build a better value to fight our opponents. Finest Hour seems like a really fun enchantment. It says whenever creature you control attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase of this turn, untap it, there's an additional combat. This feels really good when we have these big creatures that have trample or flying and we're hitting in for good damage. Then we get to take our regular combat and that creature gets to attack again. It feels really good, and it's going to lead towards some big fun combats for our opponents having to deal with. Hallowed Haunting that I mentioned at the start is great in all these enchantment decks, because as long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures we control have flying and vigilance. That alone can work towards ending a game, especially if our opponents aren't playing a ton of flyers. But then you add on top of it, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, we make a white spirit cleric that's a star, where star is the number of spirits we control. So the more those spirits stick down, the bigger they all get, and they turn into a threat once we hit 7 or more enchantments, because then they have flying and vigilance as well. And then besides Ivy, probably the other card I would ever want to push Elevir into to Bant, and that's Vesuvian Diplomacy. A 4-mana enchantment says whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature you control, you create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's not legendary. This seems like a particularly brutal ability if you can get it running. There are, of course, other commanders that have broken this beyond means, but I look at things like Calyx or Elevir or Tuvasa, where if you can copy them multiple times, they're just going to create value on the board that your opponents are going to have to try to deal with. And that's where we want to go, is get this value, get the board fairly wide, get it souped up, get it tall, get in for combat, and win the game that way, instead of some infant mana shenanigans and things like that. We're really trying to end the game with a lot of our auras. So let's talk about them. What are we looking to do? Well, we have things like All That Glitters, +1/+1 for each artifact and enchantment we control. We have Ancestral Mask, +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. So the more enchantments, the better on that one. And we're going to pair these with things like Armadillo Cloak next to it that gives that creature trample and lifelink. So you're not only going to get it big, but you're going to try to have it connect through for the damage. Same things for things like Cartouche of Knowledge or Rune of Flight that give that creature flying. So not only are we trying to make that creature big, but we're going to try to give it some evasion that get in for damage. Cool part about that Cartouche and Rune is they both draw a card when they come in, meaning that not only do we get to replace it in our hand when we play it, but if we copy it with any of these other abilities, we're getting a card. Ethereal Armor gives the creature first strike and +1/+1 for each enchantment we control. So again, another way to give that effective +1/+1 for each one we control. Rune Might gives trample, so again we're getting that sticking power out. Sage's Reverie is a great one. It comes in and we draw a card for each aura we control that's attached to a creature, and then enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each aura we control that's attached to a creature. So another pretty big buff, since most of our decks is really auras. Shield of the Oversoul, as long as the enchanted creature is green, it gets +1/+1 indestructible, and as long as it's white, it has flying. So if we attach this to a creature that's green and white, they get flying and indestructible, which is pretty great. Steel of the Godhead is the white and blue half of it, so if it's white, it gets lifelink, and if it's blue, it has unblockable. Again, another way to potentially get into our opponents for some good damage. We have Strength of the Harvest from Modern Horizons 3, a new kind of another one of these type of effects. +1/+1 for each creature or enchantment we control. The cool part is it does have a dual land on the backside if we need that. Unquestioned Authority, giving the creature protection from creatures, is going to make it unblockable and make it easier to hit. We have multiples of that abilities, but I hope you could start to see that the cross-section of the deck is auras to make them bigger and auras to make them actually hit our opponents and turn that raw, buff into damage to our opponents. There's a lot of nuance to it, but at the end of the day, this is still a deck archetype that I'm personally still working on, and for this deck, this was my first shot at it in the Bant colors, really. And so there's going to be cards that we want to consider as we push into testing and as you really take this deck for running. The first is something like Broker's Ascendancy. Anything we can do to get more loyalty counters on Estrid means we can use her abilities more. Cool part of Broker's Ascendancy is it passes out counters and loyalty counters on each Planeswalker, so those creatures are just going to get bigger and bigger. Ondu Spirit Dancer is a card I really love. I couldn't find a slot for it in this deck, but I think it probably deserves its spot in there. Whenever enchantment comes in under our control, we can create a token that's a copy of it and do this only once each turn. The great part about auras, if it's an aura that we're copying, we get to just make a copy and attach it to whatever we want. The fun part about auras, we do have some auras in the deck, like the one next to it, that we're considering, but we do other in the deck that are pieces of removal. The really cool part is once an aura hits the battlefield, if it wasn't cast, it doesn't target. So if you make copies of things like Darksteel Mutation or Kenris Transformation that attach to a creature and make them lose their abilities and change them, we can just attach them to something else, get around Shroud, get around Hexproof. You wouldn't get around Protection, but there's a lot of ways to get around some of those abilities with auras. And then Amphibian Downpour, we're paying a couple others in the deck, but Flash Storm, so if we take a big turn, we can storm and get more of them, and the enchanted creature just loses all abilities and is a 1/1 blue frog. I love this style of ability. Because I think it's something that can punish certain decks, right? So often or not, our removal is I'm going to destroy that. I'm going to destroy your commander. It goes back to the end zone, command zone. And I'm going to exile that creature and get it out of here. What I think is so good about some of these auras that affect creatures is, graveyard decks can get those creatures back as soon as they die, but if they're stuck on the battlefield with no abilities and they're losing that combo piece, now they have to try to figure out how to get it back. Yes, some decks will just sacrifice that creature and it gets around this. But the point is that this is Flash Storm, meaning if somebody takes a big turn, you could flash this in and just nuke their whole board into 1/1 frogs. I really like the card. I think it could deserve a spot. It's just about finding your mix on what removal right you're playing and what draw you're playing. But let's get into our play tests. Remember that Estrid is 4 mana, so we want to be working our way towards that. We are keeping a 1, 2, 3 lander with a Farseek, Shield of the Oversoul, Copy Enchantment, and Eidolon. So we got Eidolon for some draw, Shield for one of the auras in our hand, Farseek for some ramp, Copy Enchantment can copy some interesting things. So turn one we draw Glacial Fortress. I think we're just going to get that Canopy Vista down and tapped. This would allow us to get Glacial Fortress in untapped at some point, but again, I don't really see a good better play there. Turn 2, I think I would go with that Glacial Fortress and just Farseek. I mean, we really don't have any other options I can see here. We'll get the Spar's Headquarters. Now we could potentially get Estrid down on turn 3, but I kind of like the idea of just getting the Eidolon down, get that draw engine starting as we work towards it. Here we'll get the Dark Waste down, and I would just go ahead and get Eidolon of Blossoms down. That draws when it comes in. So now we've got this draw mechanic going. We draw a Retether for the turn, which is a way to get auras back, and we draw a Destiny Spinner, which prevents our creatures and enchantments from being countered, and then for 4 mana we can turn a land into a creature, XX, where X is the number of enchantments we control. It's a way to potentially hit our opponents and hit hard. Turn 5 we draw Flawless Maneuver, which is a great spell by a lot of means. Let's see. We could Shield of the Oversoul and Destiny Spinner, so I think I would do that. Destiny Spinner and draw, because we could potentially draw something else. Estrid's is Estrid's is great. This is something that comes in copies, and then at every one of our upkeeps, we can bounce it and have it come back in to copy something else. I would play let's play the Treva's Ruins here. We're going to tap this at Darkar Waste for a colorless and pick it up, because we have to do that for the Treva's at Ruins, but it comes in with the ability to do that. And I think for copy enchantment, I'm either thinking of copy enchanting Eidolon of Blossoms, or just putting the Shield of the Oversoul on Eidolon of Blossoms to kind of get it moving. I'm kind of thinking about doing that. That's going to draw us a card from the Eidolon of Blossoms. Now this is a 3/3 with indestructible, no flying, but that's okay. Now we get to take an attack with this turn. Turn 5, we'll play that at Darkar Waste back down. Like the idea of Dryad of the Illusion Grove, that could get us another land down this turn, but unfortunately with it being a tap land in our hand, it means we could do Dryad, draw for turn, see what we get. Oh, okay. Get the tapped in, and I think I would get Stony Silence down. Stony Silence is a brutal card for some decks, meaning activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. This will shut down mana rocks, this will shut down things, but again, our entire deck is enchantments. We're playing no artifacts in the deck for this card specifically, meaning that this is not going to hurt us at all. And it's only going to help. The other nice part about Dryad is now all of our lands are every basic land type, meaning that we don't have to worry about our colors now. We'll have exactly what mana we need. Take another attack with Eidolon, and we'll move here towards the next turn. Play a Forest for turns. We are at 7 mana. I would probably like to get Estrid down, right? That seems like it would make some sense. I really wish we had a better way to draw. We do have a way to draw more cards, right? In that we can just play enchantments. So I'd probably take a shot at one of my copiers here. And I think I kind of want to copy Eidolon of Blossoms just to get some extra draw here. When it comes in, it's going to draw, and the regular Eidolon of Blossoms is going to draw us a card. So that's great, right? That was just 3 mana, 4 mana left. We used the 4 mana on Estrid. So I would go ahead and tick her down a loyalty counter to make that mask token. And I think I would go ahead and put it on... I guess I'll put it on Dryad, because we can start playing extra lands with it. But again, just gets another enchantment on the battlefield. That's going to actually draw us 2. So maybe we should have been a little bit more careful there, but that's okay. Now we're spreading some love around, and now we have a fresh, we have lots of stuff in our hands, so we can make sure that we're, playing more and more things each turn. Hit with Eidolon if we can here. Otherwise, we'll just go to end step and have to pitch. I kind of want to pitch the Forest. I think we're probably good on mana at this point. And I love the idea of keeping open the armory in hand and going and getting one of our auras that have big stuff. So I think maybe I'll pitch the Fertile Ground. It stinks to pitch the mana sources, but I think we're good on mana. It's just about finding the right things. So turn 7, we've got 7 mana. We've got the 2 Eidolons. We've got some draw ahead of us. I like the idea of getting... Aura Gnarlid's a great attacker that gets +1/+1 for each aura on the battlefield and can't be blocked by creatures with power less than it. So it becomes a great unblockable threat for our opponents. We have now a Flawless Maneuver online, which is nice. I kind of like the idea of getting the Gnarlid down. We got 4 mana left. I would probably open the armory, and I'm looking for probably something like... the All That Glitters of the world, or... I guess we could also do something like Ethereal Armor, but let's go get All That Glitters, bring it to hand, and then the only problem now is I have 2 mana left, and if I attach this All That Glitters right now, I'm drawing 1-2 cards. I think I would just draw too many, right? I'm going to end up losing some. So I think I would just go ahead and get Setessan Champion down. I would go ahead and -1 her again to put a mask on the champion, and I just realized I just did it again. 1, 2, 3 cards drawn because of Eidolon of Blossoms and Setessan Champion getting a counter and drawing a card. But it's okay, now we can play, 1-2 lands for turn. At least we're back down to 7. That 4/5 Village, I guess, could have come in untapped, but I'm not necessarily worried about that. Flawless Maneuver is free right now because of Estrid. And again, now once we start getting some of these think about it this way. We can get all that glitters down and get 2 copies of it with these, right? As soon as we put it down, now we're souping up 3 creatures and getting them ready to go. So here on turn 8, as long as nobody's interacted with our board, which we have the flawless maneuver in case someone did this early in the game, we're sitting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 mana. Remember, color doesn't matter. Let's see. I would get the... Let's do the all that glitters on Destiny Spinner. 1, 2, 3 cards drawn. Counter on Setessan Champion. Glimmer for turn. That'll guess come in tap. So that was 2 mana. Mirror Maid copying it on... Let's go Dryad, I guess. So we're up to 5 mana. So 1, 2, 3 draws. Counter on Setessan Champion. Now we start seeing Unflinching Courage, which is a way to give something trample. So we've got, what, 5 mana left to this turn? Hallowed Haunting seems great. We would immediately put everything in the sky, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Hallowed Haunting would literally immediately put everything in the sky, draw 3, counter on Setessan Champion. I believe we can get that forest down as our second land off of Dryad. Now everything's in the air, and we take a big swing this turn. I mean, some of our opponents are definitely in trouble. Oran Arlid is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7/7 that can't be blocked probably as well. And then I would tick up Estrid to untap everything, right, just to keep them up and ready for combat next turn. And then again, at this point, if we still have the flawless maneuver, we're just protecting ourselves. Move to end step. I'd probably pitch. At this point, I just need things to end the game. Satyr, we have too much draw already. I like the idea of Umbra Mystic just to push in for some more protection, right, than just the masks themselves. Cartouche will draw us a card. I guess I'll pitch Imprisoned, and I mean, at this point, we probably don't need the removal. And then on our next turn, I mean, we just, get that all that glitters on 1 or 2 other things. We're already in the air, get trample on something, and just take a big attack, and we're probably in for some good damage at that point. So as you can see, we want to go wide, but not too wide as we're pushing forward for value. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with Tuvasa. Tuvasa is a great creature for us to see as can be very helpful. Both Ethereal Armor and all that glitters means we are set up to have some fun. We'll get that island in turn 1, so that way the Glacial Fortress could come in untapped. I mean, I really don't have anything to do with turn 2, so we'll just kind of sit there. Turn 3, we get the forest down, play Tuvasa, so now we can get Tuvasa growing, and now we have great targets for our auras. Turn 4, we'll play the Hall of Heliod's Generosity. I mean, there is an argument to just, like, we could play Oran Arlid there and then get the Ethereal Armor down on Tuvasa. That would draw us a card right with Tuvasa. Now Tuvasa's going to start growing, and we're setting up for future turns. Turn 5, get that Dreamroot Cascade now. So we have 5 mana. Ooh, I love the idea of getting Ivy plus something like Unflinching Courage down this turn. Put the Courage on Tuvasa. We make a copy of the Courage on Ivy, and that draws us a card off of Tuvasa. So now what? 1, 2, 3 enchantments down right now. So we've got a 5/5 buff on Tuvasa, 3/3 buff on, or just a 2/2 buff on Ivy. But that's okay. Attack with Tuvasa again. Get in somewhere with Lifelink, Trample, and First Strike because of Ethereal Armor. We're in good shape. The part that's great now is if we can get Estrid down, Estrid is just going to help us out by basically, right, untapping them. But I don't even know if we need to. If I think about it, there is a world where we could Finest Hour. I mean, Oran Arlid's a 5/5 that probably isn't blocked right now in turn 6. We could All That Glitters the Gnarlid, which would copy itself onto the Ivy and make Ivy massive in the air for life gain. We could do the same for Estrid's Invocation, have it come in as a copy of something. It won't get the Ivy trigger, but it could still be important. Let's do the Dryad and draw just to see what we get. Okay. Well, we get nothing too much, but that's okay. I would do all the glitters on Gnarlid, make a copy attached to Ivy. So now Ivy's getting big in the air. We have 2 big attackers here. Take the attacks. Gnarlid can take the attack this turn too. And I mean, now all we need is just a turn or 2 more of just putting auras on things and getting in for damage. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Estrid down in the comment section below. I love this Auras style. It's been a deck I've had a ton of fun playing, and I thought, why not take that viewer's suggestion and do it here for the channel for Estrid and talk about the Bant side of it. And I'd love to hear what you think. What am I missing? If you tried something like this, I'd love to hear what you think. And we'll catch you guys next time.